So I think there are some similarities between the Cold War international system and what we are looking at today. But that's not the main reason why the Cold War analogy is so much used in the public discourse. I think that's simply because this was the last great international system and the one that people, including foreign policy analysts and politicians, know the best. So it's quite natural to draw comparisons with what we know. And sometimes that leads to a overabundance of similarities in people's minds. So there are similarities and differences. The similarities are quite clear. This is a system in which you have one predominant power, in my view, which is the United States of America on a global scale, facing a challenger, which is China, but also other countries that are out to undo the present organization of international politics. And it is very much a conflict that is oriented towards what kind of political and economic system works the best. So there are similarities, but there are also enormous differences. And the main difference, of course, that China and all other competitor states are already integrated in a global capitalist economy. So it isn't that ideological divide that existed between capitalism and communism. And the second one is that even though our focus is on China today, my view is that over time there would be many more challenges that would come up in the international system. So we're not looking at the kind of Cold War style bipolarity, but rather a multipolar world, at least say a decade from now. Many people thought that our day and age would be dominated by some degree of a stable competition between the United States and China, in which the two countries did integrate a lot in economic terms, but still had, the political and strategic rivalries. I think over the last 5 to 6 years that has changed. So we're moving towards a much more systemic form of conflict. Not, in my view, like the strict bipolarity of the Cold War, but still, an intense conflict between the United States and China, but also increasingly between the United States and other challenges within the international system. It is a world in many ways that reminds me much more of the European world prior to World War I than it does the Cold War, in terms of the turn towards multipolarity and the forms of competition, even intense competition and conflict that you find between the different countries. I think what has changed internally in the United States is that Americans of all political persuasions simply do not like political peer competitors in an international setting. I mean, this does have an historical background in the way the United States was created, as much as an ideological enterprise as a state or a nation state. But it also has to do, of course, with the United States having been on top for a very long time, at least 2 generations, if not more. And it's hard then to get used to the idea that there are other countries out there that are able to compete with you quite successfully. And of course, American politicians, particularly the current Trump administration, but others as well in both parties, have been feeding on this instinct that many Americans have to want to remain number one and see any kind of outside rivalry, any kind of outside challenge as a direct threat to them. And that feeling, I don't think will go away, even if Trump were to win this election. I think that's going to remain under a new administration. It's going to remain in America in more general terms. And that's a drawback, I think, from the American perspective in terms of America's ability to prepare itself domestically, first and foremost, economically, for the kind of competition that's going to come in the future.